Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I'm your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Eric Brew. Eric currently holds multiple positions within multiple organizations, including Manager of Military Engagement for American Corporate Partners, co founder and executive director of Tip of the Spear Professional Coaching, member of the Board of Advisors for Impact Vets, military transition mentor, and more. Prior to currently holding all these roles, Eric was in the military for a total of 25 years, including being a service member of the branches of Army and the Marines. You can find Eric by going to LinkedIn and searching Eric Brew or emailing him at ebrew at acp-usa.org. Hello, Eric. Welcome to the show.
Well, Olivia, thank you for having me.
To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Eric Brew?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, you just like really dive in. Like, there's no, that wasn't. Wow. Okay, sure. The big question: what's
Yeah,
success?
we're going to hit hard real off the bat.
I'm all for it. Honestly, I think success for me is finding alignment. Right. I don't know that at this stage of my life, I put a dollar amount on success or a position or a title. I think for me, it's about finding alignment. It's about, if we're talking about employment, right? It's about finding an organization that aligns with my core values and what I want. It's about landing in a position that aligns with my talents and my goals and my aspirations and where I see myself in 5 years. Or, you know, it, it's about finding alignment, and I can point that in any direction in life, right? It's, if you're looking at relationships, about finding alignment with the person you're aligned with. And to me, I think that at my stage in life, I think I've found that success, it all hinges on being in alignment.
And I think that's really accurate. It's aligning with who you are, what you're trying to achieve, where you are in that moment of time, right? Because I totally agree. And I think you could be aligned a certain way and be on a certain trajectory now, like you were, for example, with being in the army, and then you came back and you decided to go into Marine. So your alignment changed, and then transitioning out and to civilian life, for me, it's really like when I do certain chapters of my life, my alignment can change, and then
Yep.
success looks different to me as well. Eric, what made you go into the military, and what was that journey like for you during your time in the military?
Wow. Yeah. Why did I join the Marine Corps? So, I'm going to date myself, but we're talking the 90s here, right? Graduated high school, and I don't think I had an idea what I wanted to do with my life. I think I was at a place where academia did not sound enjoyable to me, right? Coming out of high school, and I was an athlete in high school, and academia was, it was there, but it was a second, second to sports. Probably not, in retrospect, probably not the order that should have been in. But I digress. But I think, once I got out of high school and I tried a couple of things and it just didn't work, and then yeah, I joined the Marine Corps. I think more than anything, just because I needed to find some way to straighten out and get myself into a path that made sense. Um, but yeah, I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. I guess I would say I wasn't having the fun I was promised. Right, it was not a lot going on, and so I got out. I separated from the Marine Corps. I did my first tour honorably, and then EASed out of the Marine Corps. Um, and then this thing called 9/11 happened, and I immediately felt a call back. And so on 9/11, I went back to Marine Corps recruiter and I said, "Hey, I'm back, right? I was 0311, so I was an infantry guy, and I was like, I'm a primary marksmanship instructor. I've got all these qualifications. I'm ready to rock and roll. Put me back in, coach. I'm ready to go." And
Mhm.
the recruiter denied my request, said that they did not take quitters. Is kind of the phrase he used. And so I walked out of his office. I banged a hard left. I walked into the Army recruiter's office. I think I got, I don't know, 3 or 4 words out of my mouth. And he said, "Absolutely, right now." And so that was the rest was history. I spent a total of 25 years in the military, between the Marine Corps and the Army. Um, I've deployed several times. I've had I like to say I've had a charmed and blessed career. I thoroughly enjoyed my career. Um, I was able to deploy and do a lot of weird things in weird places with weird people. Um, but I was, again, just as an infantry guy, as a guy that was, out there kind of having some fun in the sandbox, as we like to say. Um, but I was also able to gain and glean a lot of skills that I really think are transferable on the outside. A lot of things about, like, soft skills and leadership and operational understanding and things like that. So I had a great time. But I guess that's the 30,000 foot view of how I ended up in the military, and then what that time looked like.
Before we move on, I want to touch upon something unique that you experienced that a lot of guys don't experience is the fact you were in two different branches within the military during your service. A lot of
Right.
people enter one branch and stay within that branch until they become a civilian again at the end of their career when they decide that time is up. For you, what was it like going from, you know, the like both sides of it, and then how has that played a role in who you are today? Because you've had the experience of multiple branches, you've been able to kind of apply different tools and experiences you've had to a different branch of the military, and you've been able to connect with different individuals from different branches and
Mhm.
have that camaraderie where a lot of guys, they'll be like army for life, marine for life, like ride or die, that's it, that's my branch. And for you, how has that played a role being in two different branches in your experiences and how you kind of view things?
I think what I was blessed to experience at a very young age was the beginning of understanding transition, right? Transitioning into the military going into the Marine Corps as a young, 20-year-old kid, and then having never been in the military before. That was a huge transition. But I think the military service, and whether it is, 4 years or 24 years, or it's two branches of service or three branches of service, I think starts to establish an understanding of what it means to transition, and it starts to give you tools that you can put in your tool bag to navigate transition, because transition is something that happens at all stages of life, sometimes whether we want it to or not. Right. I transitioned into the military, I transitioned out of the military, I transitioned into civilian life, and then back into the military. It all plays a part in building a resiliency, right? And an ability to navigate those transitions. They're not always easy. I just in 2020, navigated a new transition. I'd never retired before. Sure, I'd gotten out of the Marine Corps before, but that was a long time ago, right? So it starts this process of learning resiliency in transition, and I think that's been one of the biggest benefits. Um, I go, again, you go through transitions at all points in life. I've got four adult children. I've got two teenagers. I'm very close to experiencing another transition where it's just me and my wife in the home, right? And although I love my children, I'm excited about that transition, right? But I think transition is just that. It's a changing of seasons, right? It's a changing of priorities. It's a changing of perspectives. And so sometimes, like you said earlier, it's forcing us to change our alignment and what we need to align with. So I think that all of that experience, if I were to wrap it all up, I think it just provides an incredible amount of resilience, um, and an ability to transition, and then gives you some really good tools.
Eric, you transitioned out of the military, in 2020, like you just said. How has that played a role in what you do today? So you decided to make your life's work helping other veterans transition and get that alignment from being an active mili- in the military to
Mhm.
civilian life. And how did your own experience play in the role of deciding that was going to be kind of your next step in your career path?
Yeah, that's an answer that's going to require some transparency, maybe even a little vulnerability. So I'm standing where I am today because I failed. And I think sometimes we learn our greatest lessons through failure, right? I'm not afraid of failure. I've never been afraid of failure. Um, but being afraid of failure and then experiencing it are a couple of different things. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. Um, but when I transitioned out of the out of the army and I started that process, I had this great plan in my head. I was a very successful senior enlisted person. I had at that time one child in the army already. Now I've got two children in the army. But a successful career. You know, I mean, you point to all the marks, and I was knocking them out of the park. And so I thought I had this great plan for transition. And I put that plan in the world's best chokehold. Uh, Strangled the crap out of it, and it failed on me. And that humbled me, right? That set me back on my heels a little bit because I started to question how someone who is already successful can then fail in the next thing we're trying to do, and why couldn't I figure this thing out? And what that led me to believe was that, and what it led me to discover is that I wasn't alone, and that it was unfortunately something that a vast majority of my brothers and sisters, my community, go through as they transition. And so, because of my failure, and because of where it kind of placed me, I don't know. I think I just made this internal vow that if I touched somebody, I was going to impact their life to a point that they didn't have to experience maybe some of the same failures I did. So the short answer, Olivia, is just it's failure. Failure is what led me to where I'm standing today.
And I think that's a really key point right there is you brought up the fact that you were struggling with the fact you had been successful, you've gotten, these accomplishments under your belt, you've done all these things, but when you went to transition, the plan you had in place did not create the success you thought it was going to create. And sometimes it isn't going to be that simple of here's my plan. Okay, I'm going to hit every mark. And when I hit every mark, it's accomplished and I'm going to feel this success because it's also that moment in time where when you're making that plan and you're looking at it on paper, it could seem okay, easy to do. These are the marks I have to hit. And when I hit it, it'll be done and what I envision happening will happen. And then as you start to do those things, you start to realize, okay, this isn't going the trajectory I want. It isn't as easy as writing it down on a piece of paper and saying, okay, now it's going to happen. It's not always that Disney moment of poof, the magic's there. And so I think that was a key point you brought up is the failure happens even when you think you're going to achieve your success.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and in that failure creates a moment and a momentum to achieve the success you're meant to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I built my perfect vision board. I just watched it crumble. Right.
I mean, and what was that like in the moment, right? So looking back, you're like, okay, it was that failure, it was that experience, but now I'm going to kind of take those away and say, okay, I don't want any of my brothers and sisters to go through this, like you'd said. But in that moment, you don't always have that clarity
Yeah.
of, and how in that moment was it different than the clarity you had at the end? And what was it, the process like for you getting to that point?
I think it felt like, and I don't know that it was. I'm sure that it wasn't, right? But in that moment, I think that's the problem. I think it's feelings in those moments, right? In the moment, it's feeling. It's not reality. In the moment, it's fear. In the moment, it's anxiety. In the moment, it's feelings. But it may not be the reality. And I'm telling you, my feelings. It was a dark moment for me. It was terrifying. I started questioning everything about myself. Right? Like, if you can't figure this out, I mean, who can? How can I be? And get this. This is the best part. I was a master resiliency instructor in the army. I teach resiliency. How can I not be resilient? And then it wasn't just that I had failed, it was why am I reacting to my failure this way? And it became this incredible downward spiral that just put me in a very dark place where it was questioning everything about myself. And I think, and like I said, I don't know that it was, but I think it felt like I just hit rock bottom. And I figured I got to a point where um I was talking to some people, and someone had made the comment that I need to give myself permission to not have all the answers. And that kind of hit me in the face because as a senior enlisted guy, right? I don't know is not a popular phrase. Right? When you're in the military and somebody says, "Hey, what do we do here?" and I say, "I don't know." That doesn't go over well.
Mm.
And so for the first time in nearly a quarter of a century, I was in a place where I had to say, "I don't know." I had to say, I don't know what's next, and I don't know what I'm doing, and now I don't know who to reach out to." The real struggle, and I think the pivotal moment was when I was sitting on my couch and I had a great cup of coffee and I had my little MacBook in front of me, right? And I was staring at the Google machine and I realized I didn't know what to type. And so what that highlighted to me was that it wasn't that I didn't know the answer. I didn't know the flipping question.
Mm.
I didn't even know what to ask, let alone not having the answers. And so getting to that point and then having somebody tell me that I have to give myself permission to not have the answers I think that was maybe my aha moment or my little epiphany, right? Was my goodness, we all think we have the answers, but what happens when we don't? What
And I think,
happens
oh,
what
sorry.
happens when we have to step back and say, I don't know, right? So
And I
yeah, I
think
think that was my pivotal moment.
and I think that's a key point of you have to sometimes be okay with going through the mud. You
Yeah.
know, going in your situation, take a situation where you're out somewhere and you're in the middle of war zone and you don't know what lies ahead, and it could be traps and boobies traps everywhere and you don't know, but you have to give yourself permission to kind of trud through that and figure it out as you go along. And for you, what was it like? You just talked about not knowing the question to even ask, and I think that's really important to understand. Sometimes you're in a space and you're in the moment and you don't even know kind of what direction or what question will lead you to what you're looking for. So for you, how having that experience and then helping military individuals come into civilian life where they're trying to go through that and you're trying to help them, how do you help individuals figure out what the right question for them to ask is? Because everyone's different.
Yeah, I think it starts with the basics, right? Because you're right. Every one of us are completely unique. We all, and by we, I mean the veteran community, we all have a lot of similarities, right? There's a lot of generalities that you can put around military transition that we all kind of fall into. And the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has done a study that says 80, we have 200,000 service members leaving service every year, and 86% don't have a clue what they want to do when they grow up, and 84% don't know how to network with employers, and 81% don't know how to translate their military skills. So there's some generalities and there's some broad stroke things that we kind of all fit in, but there are so many nuances and so many unique situations to every transition. There's eh, our careers didn't look the same, our families don't look the same, our locations aren't the same. Like there's so many different things, our hopes and our dreams, our aspirations, they're all unique. And so I think for me, when I talk to folks, a lot of times it's about boiling all that down, right? I want to boil all that down and get to where can you find alignment? What is it that you want to align to? And I think sometimes the question is, who are you and what do you want?
Mhm.
Right? It's who are you and what do you want? Let's start there, right? Let's figure out who, and that's a really hard question. That's I say it, and I don't mean that flippantly, and I don't mean that with a light heart. I know that that's a daunting place to be, and it's incredibly difficult to answer that question, but it's really vital. It's really vital to sit down and go, okay, but what do I want? What's something that makes me? And so as we talk to folks, and that's one thing I love about my organization and the mentors that volunteer with us is they're really good at digging into that, right? They're really good at digging into what's going to fill my cup. One thing that I know, I mean, I would say, I don't, I'll make a guess as a percentage, right? There's no statistics here, but I'll make a guess, right? I'd say 80+% of us, of the veteran community, we need to find something with a strong community. We need to find something that gives us a little bit of purpose. We want to feel like we're still a part of something that's bigger than ourselves. Those things are still there. We still have that drive because that's what led us and kind of helped us move forward when we were traversing some of those dangerous grounds, right? And that's, I think that's the big difference, right? When you kind of you drew the parallel between the battlefield and then transition. The biggest difference is that in the battlefield, it's for the man and the woman to your left and right. It's something bigger than yourself. And in transition, you're looking around going, yeah, 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 we're all going through it. Yeah, 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 everybody's here to help. But this is just for me. And I don't know how to do anything that's just for me. I've been a part of a team for so long. I don't know how to just be me. And so I think taking time and doing some real internal investigation, having some real hard internal dialogue about what is it you want and who is it you want to be. I will never forget, and this is a whole bunch of stuff. I went through a divorce when I was going through my transition, right? So that was another part of things. I'll never forget. I went to the movies one time, and I got the recliner movie, right? You know, the fancy one, because I was, feeling kind of special. I wanted to treat myself pretty, right? So I got myself a soda and I had my feet up and I took a picture of my feet and I had the movie screen in the background. And I posted that on my Facebook page and I said, I think I'm getting good at this. I was starting to figure out who I was. What do I want? Right. And I was starting to get to that point. I think everybody needs that moment, especially our transitioning service members. We need that moment. Who am I? What do I want out of this world? What do I want next?
And I think that's a key point, and it's definitely a pivot of a mindset, right? So you're pivoting from being a team, and that can look like your fellow brother and sisters in the military, to being a team at home, right? With your
Hmm.
spouse as you transition. We're in this together. There's moments, especially during a transition, whether it be in the military or, for example, you're switching jobs, so it switches your location and it switches your mindset and just everything, of realizing we are a team, even though it might not be the same environment. But while we're a team and we have to figure out things together because it affects both of us, you also have to figure out your own team within you.
Hmm.
What drives you? What is your, storming, norming, going through those steps within yourself and saying, okay, this is what I tried, didn't work, didn't like it. Now I'm going to try this. Okay, didn't work. Or, yeah, it's working. Okay. What steps can I do to improve it? Or what needs to be improved? And going through that. And sometimes, like you said, it's those moments of realization when you're not fully sure where you're going, that bring the most clarity and say, okay, I like this. This is what I want to be doing. I mean, I've definitely had that. I've worked in many different fields. I've certifications in many different business areas. And in those experiences, I've had the opportunity to say, okay, I'm good at this. I like it. I like what this is doing, but I don't like these things about it. And in that, let me take those lessons learned and pivot it to the right a little bit and see if this trajectory works better. And in those moments, and Eric, tell me how you feel about this and how you try to align it with veterans that you work with, but it's taking all those pieces and rebuilding.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect segue to my favorite word picture of a veteran, right? My favorite word picture of a veteran is I see my brothers and sisters and they're standing out in this big middle of this big open field, right? And they've got this blank piece of paper in front of them, and they've got all this lumber and hardware and all the tools, and it's stacked neatly because we know how to lay some stuff out and make it look neat, right? Like we know how to do that. So it's all stacked neatly, and everything they need is right there, but they don't know if it's to build a desk or a home. The blueprint is empty. It's blank because I don't know what's next. And I think that's where valuable conversations with individuals, with mentors, with peers, with family members, and I want to touch on that in a second, but with those people, those key conversations, and as you do that, right, lengths start to show up, and then depths and some heights, and then all of a sudden, as you're creating these conversations and the churn is happening, and you're kind of like, okay, so what about this? And no, that's not going to work. And okay, what about this? Then all of a sudden you start to see a picture for what is next. But the beautiful part is, no matter what that picture turns out to be, everything you need is right there
Mhm.
because the military is prepared you. It might not look the same. Your delivery might have to be different on that skill. Your demeanor may have to be a little different, right? I tell people all the time. Every once in a while, I've got to like holster my knife hand because like, oh, nope, we're not doing that. We're not in the military anymore. My delivery may have to change, but the skills I've learned are still very, very valid. All right, but you touched on a really important piece, and that was the family, right? So for my brothers and sisters who have spouses, one of my favorite things to do in the army when we build an operation, we use this acronym called MDMP, right? Military Decision Making Process. And quite frankly, I'll let the cat out of the bag because I'm not in the army anymore. It's really just a Lean Six Sigma process. That's really what it is. Okay, but in that process, right? We have this moment where we enlist the help of some outsiders to come in and poke holes in our plan, right? We call them the red team. And so, what I would encourage all of my brothers and sisters who have a spouse or a significant other to do is to actually sit down and go knee to knee and eye to eye and hold them gently and say, I'm hiring you. I need you to be my red team. I joke all the time. My wife, if I walked out in the living room tonight and I told my wife, I've got it. I know the next thing I'm going to do. I've got it. I know what it's going to be. And she says, What are you going to do? I'm going to go on American Idol. I'm going to win, and I'm going to be the next big thing. She is the only person in the world who, with genuine love, concern, admiration, respect, can tell me that I'm the best singer in the whole shower. But the rest of America doesn't want to hear that, right? But she has this unique voice in my ear and this unique ability to deliver a message that only she can deliver, that only I can hear. And so as I'm building my plan for my next thing, she's telling me where I might be overshooting or where I'm selling myself short. So I think it's really important when you talk about the family is that you have to include the family in that conversation. Hire your family to be that. Well, you really shouldn't do this, right? Um, but yeah, I think that's an important piece when it comes to the family. Um, yeah.
And I think you hit upon a key point is leaning on your family. And that brings me into my next question I want to ask and have a discussion about because I think it's really important in understanding that during this transition and veterans figuring out what the next step is, like you had said earlier, your mindset has to shift. And
Mhm.
sometimes discussions and tools you have, they look the same. You're just building something in a different manner. But sometimes veterans all come back with different experiences. No two veterans are the same. No
Correct.
two veterans had the same exact experiences, whether it's, for example, tours that they're doing overseas or, you know, where they're stationed at home. The bases might look different, how much time they're traveling or doing training and what kind of training could look different. And it's that mindset of having to shift sometimes that isn't talked about. And those kind of communications with spouses, with family members, and sometimes it's even with your kids. You have
Mhm.
to come back centered, and it's a process to go through that. Not everyone comes back and is perfect and ready to go on to the next thing and has the clarity of where they want to go and can do it without kind of a mental transition or shift. And sometimes that shows over time in experiences as well. But what are some tools that you think both sides should have when coming together? You have people, for example, like myself, who've never been in the military, who are just a civilian and might be working with someone like yourself who has transitioned or is transitioning out of the military. And during that time, it can be hard on both sides, friends, family, it doesn't matter who it is, because the communication isn't the same at all times.
Mhm.
And how do you advise individuals to say, okay, from a civilian standpoint, listen to what they're saying? They have experience on that part. You bring an experience on the military side, come together, and this is how you can kind of mold yourself, or both of you mold each other from each other's experiences to move forward.
I, you know, Olivia, the beautiful thing is that answer applies to every person in this
Mhm,
country because it isn't just veterans,
mhm,
right? I believe that the answer is people want to be seen and heard. That's it. We want to be seen and heard. I don't expect you, Olivia, to be able to sit back and go, "Oh yeah, I know what it's like to walk through, the poppy fields of Afghanistan. Oh, I know what it's like to be in a gunfight. Sure, I know what it's like to be blown up by an IED. I don't expect you to do that. I would never do that. But I do want you to listen.
mhm,
And I do need you to see me. And I don't think it matters which group of human beings you're talking about. I think everyone in this world simply wants to be heard and seen. So for military folks, I would say, listen, tell your story. Know your audience, right? I don't need to talk about all the gory details, right? Us military folks, when we're standing around a bonfire with a beer and a cigar, like we'll tell all the gory details. We've got that dark side to be able to handle that, right? But when you're sitting in a meeting room with your teammates and you're just kind of jaw jacking and talking, and you're trying to explain where you've been, be mindful of who you're talking to, right? So tell your story. Don't be afraid to share your story. Do it in a way that's respectful to the people around you, but 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 tell your story so you can be seen and heard. And then for my civilian brothers and sisters, I would say be willing to listen, be willing to hear it, and don't try and understand it, and don't force the oh yeah I get it, because we know you don't, and it's not a dig, it's not a bad thing, we just know you don't. I think that'd be very similar to you and I having a conversation, Olivia, and me telling you, yeah, I know what it's like to be a woman. No, I don't. I've never done that. Right? Or me talking to my wife, me like, I don't know, I know it's like to have kids. It's okay. No, I don't. So there's some nuances, there's some differences. The beautiful thing is that we're all human beings. And that if we treat people with basic human respect, and we see people and we hear people and we have a heart to do that, I think we're fine. And I think that answer just spans it all. I don't think it needs to get any deeper with veterans. I mean, quite frankly, the veteran community is a microcosm of the rest of the United States. We come from all walks of life, all social economical levels. We come from all, every background and ethnicity and religion, and it doesn't. We're a microcosm of the rest of the country, so we're still just people. We just have different experiences, right? And everyone looks at life through the lenses that are colored by their experiences. So if we take that into account and we treat people like people, we love on people and we let them feel seen and heard, I think we're fine. I think we're fine. I think the one tool though that the military brings to the table, and I mean this with all my heart, I think the one tool that we bring to the table that allows us to be able to navigate all this transition is our resiliency. It's our ability to be resilient and stand strong in the face of adversity. I might have felt like I hit rock bottom. It might have been a low point in my life. I might have had a lot of self doubt and a lot of negative self talk, but I knew how to dust myself off, stand up, roll my shoulders back, lift my chin up, and move forward. Right. And I think that's the one thing that this veteran community brings in spades. I don't know if that answered your question. I think it answered your question.
You answered my question, and I think you brought up a few key points there. One is about resiliency, and it's something a lot of veterans and active military personnel can really teach to their fellow neighbor. I think sometimes, especially in a younger generation, is that we forget that there is that resiliency that we have to go through and say, it's going to be better. I have to struggle today, right? You have to struggle in order to say, okay, I'm going to get back up. And when I get back up, I'm just going to keep pushing forward and just keep moving. And success will come, or my accomplishment will come, my end goal. And the other part you brought up there is talking about it is okay to not understand, but to validate someone's feelings and make them feel heard. One thing I personally do, and it isn't just with military personnel, it's really in my everyday life and a skill that can transition across the board, is and I'll tell a quick story. I was actually having a text conversation the other day, and I sent a simple text. It was actually, I'm not gonna lie, it was a text I actually sent the same exact text to like 5 people. I was excited something happened, and I was just like, "Hey, go check this out," like, blah, blah, blah. And I got a text back, and it wasn't what I was expecting from one individual. And I was like, "Okay, not what I was expecting in any way, shape, or form." And I kinda said that, and I tried to say where I was coming from, and I knew it wasn't being received
Mhm.
in the original text that I thought it was going to be, and finally I had to say, "I hear you. I'm not trying to say you're wrong or say you don't have a point. I'm sitting here saying, I hear you. I validate your feelings in this. It is
Mhm.
valid. You went through that experience, which made you have a different light on this situation and what I was trying to say. And that is okay. I'm not trying to tell you any way, shape, or form differently. I am just saying this was this was the general thought, and this was my idea, and this is where I was coming from. And sometimes, no matter the situation, even if it's hard sometimes when you're in a moment, and you can, and tell me how you feel about this, but in the heat of the moment, when a discussion goes away, you weren't expecting it to go. You sit there and you're like, oh my God, you know, what were they thinking? Or like, how can they react that way? And your own emotions get built into it. But at some point, you have to look at it and go, okay, we might both be right, or we might never come to a conclusion, but it's important to make the other person understand that doesn't mean we think less of them. That doesn't mean we think differently of them. That doesn't mean they don't have valid opinions. That just means we think differently and we have different approaches. And let's just validate each other and say, okay, and go from there.
Yeah, I think the art of agreeing to disagree is one that I think we need to get back. Right. I think we need to fight for that. I think we owe it to each other to fight for that. Um, and I think it's funny, when you speak specifically about veterans and the civilian populace, it's not just the civilians who don't understand, right? My brothers and sisters get just as frustrated when they're trying to explain something, or they get just as frustrated when the civilian doesn't work as hard as they think they should, right? There's a lot of times we get into this place where, and again, you can kind of take the word veteran out, but I think it does. I think this does kind of hit home with a lot of our veterans. Is you get into this place where you have this ideal mindset of the way things should go, and when somebody else disrupts that mindset, and when someone else kind of causes waves in your line of thinking, I think we've started taking things personally as opposed to saying, "Oh, there's a difference in thought." Olivia, I'm a big fan of diversity of thought, right? I'm a big fan of diversity of perspective. I want people to challenge me. I want people to ask me why. It's my favorite question in the world. Why? Number one, It means that you're paying attention enough to know you don't understand. Two, it affords me the opportunity to explain and provide clarity. And three and four is I am seen and I am heard. I think the question why is a far too unasked question, and then in some cases it's asked in the wrong way, right? But I think just asking someone why and taking the time to say it's not the way I would have done it, but it got done, right?
Mhm.
I think our veteran community, um, we spend a lot of time in an institutionalized thinking. Um, I tell folks all the time it's hurtful to a lot of people, and I don't mean to hurt my brothers and sisters' hearts, but we think that we're these great critical thinkers in the military, and we're not. We've lost the ability to be critical thinkers because we don't make any of the rules. Everything we do, from the way we do our jobs, the way we interact with each other, to the way we put on our clothes, is in a manual with written instructions with exactly what to do. Everything is written for us, and therefore the military has eliminated my need to critically think and to come outside of the box and to think outside the grenade, if it will. I don't have to do that because everything's written for me. And so as I step into the civilian world and I realize that my civilian counterparts have been doing this a lot longer than I have, there's some value in recognizing the two ears and one mouth thing at that point, right? There's some value in going, well, this is something I could learn. And I know a lot of folks, if I've got military folks listening, I guarantee I've had this conversation so many times. No, I was a critical thinker. I made my own decisions all the time. No, you didn't. Because if you made a decision that was against regulation, you were in trouble. So you just followed regulation. All you do is make one of 63 different available decisions that all fell under the same umbrella. So when you step into civilian employment, when you step into the civilian world, recognize that our civilian counterparts are probably a little bit better at being critical thinkers than we are. Humble yourself, take the time to listen, and walk yourself through the problem.
And that brings us to the next thing I want to discuss. And I wanted to make sure we cover in this discussion because I honestly believe it gets missed a lot of the time when we talk about military personnel, their experiences, what they bring to the table, especially as they transition to civilian life, is how you apply your skills from the military and whatever branch you might have been in or whatever role you played. You've medics in the military, you have, personnel who were in the reserves who might have never been in combat. You've, employees that are solely on base to help certain situations. So you've, even within the military, a lot of people with different skill sets, different experiences, but sometimes it's hard on both sides to understand on a piece of paper, a resume specifically, where a lot of companies want bullet points of what you've done and your accomplishments and put it in 5 words and hit all the marks, especially when nowadays it's not you're reading every resume. There's a lot of resumes that come in, so it goes through a computer generated system.
Yep.
Based on keywords, it populates it out, which tends to make it harder for military personnel to say, okay, yeah, I have 5 years of, you know, this computer system software, or I was doing this for 5 years, because it is vastly different. How do you help, or what tools have you given to military personnel on how to write that or put those skills in a different perspective that can help them get a job or a role they want? And what would you say, on the other hand, to someone who's looking at resumes or sitting in an interview with someone who was in the military and saying from the opposite side, understand the experiences are different. They might not be able to write it all down or explain all of it, right? Because in some situations, it's classified. You really just can't talk about it. That doesn't mean they don't bring assets to the table that could
Right.
really help your team. So it's that like give and take of understanding and saying, yes, they have a role on our team as well.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. 81% of 200,000 service members struggle with translating their military experience into that elusive language of civilianese, right? I talked about not being able to network with employers, or not getting feedback from hiring managers, not knowing what you want to do next. If I'm really being honest, I think those things, if you boil them down to their core, they don't become an abilities issue. They don't become a capabilities problem. They don't become an experience deficit. They become a communications gap. It's communication. That's really what we're looking at. It's not that we don't have the skills, the talents, the abilities. It's communication. And then on top of its communication, it's not only do I have these abilities, but how do I make someone who has never worn the uniform? How do I make them see that my value, my worth, my talents, my abilities, my goals transcend the uniform? How do I make someone see that Eric Brew has stuff that transcends First Sergeant Brew? I didn't just get all these skills and this stuff and leave it at the gate when I walked out the gate. Right. I brought it with me because some of it is now intrinsic within me. So how do I verbalize that? The worst answer I can give you is it depends. Because it depends on the role you're looking for. It depends on the organization. It depends on your own goals. It depends on your experience. There are great ways to navigate what's next and how do I verbalize it, but they're not all the same. One thing that kind of it was a big eye opening moment for me, or an aha moment for me, was when I realized that when I left the army, I left the last organization that standardized everything. Government standardizes everything. It's easy. There's one form, you fill it out, boom, it takes care of that thing. There's one form, you fill it out, it takes care of that thing. There's no such thing as one resume to rule them all. If you fill out a resume for a financial institution to apply, your resume is going to look vastly different than that resume for an IT startup. If you interview for a project management role at an organization, that interview is going to look different than a cybersecurity style interview. They're not all the same. And so the hard answer is it depends. It depends on what you're going to do, but there are ways to change the language. There are ways to take a step back, change your perspective, look at it's almost like taking off your glasses, putting your experience in front of you, and then putting on different glasses. I just got to see my experience a little differently, right? But to my civilian brothers and sisters, what I would tell you that if you want to capitalize on the incredible amount of talent and value that the veteran community brings, then hire people that can help you understand what they did. Have a veteran ERG, have a veteran onboarding process, have a veteran in charge of military talent acquisition, have someone in your staff, a team, a division, whatever you need for your size of organization, but have something that helps the people who need to understand it understand it. Have someone to sit down and go, no, no, Jim, this is what he means. No, no, Janice, this is what it looks like. This is really what he did. Have someone that can do that, because sometimes, and I've seen this happen far too many times, my brothers and sisters will apply, and I've watched them apply, and I know what they bring to the table. And man, they are perfect for that role. But because someone on the other side didn't quite understand, not only did the veteran miss out on a great opportunity with an organization, but the organization missed out on a great opportunity with a real talent. And that's the rub. When we can't communicate, we miss out. And we can take that in any direction you want, because it applies to every area of life. When we miss on the communication, we just miss out.
And I love that. And I think that's such a key point, and I can't express it enough. When you mess up on, not even mess up's not the right word, but when you miss communications, and sometimes it's just we all communicate differently.
Mhm.
But when you're not both on the same road, you miss each other, and that misses opportunities for both of you. It might be you missed out on a great employee, a team member, someone who could go really far in within the organization and maybe bring the organization to a whole new level because you never know. It could be missing out on a friendship because you really just didn't understand, or you were talking in two different languages and there was no way to kind of align it. You could be missing out, put it this way, you could be missing out on a relationship too, whether it is a friendship or a significant other. And that could partially be as well the fact that instead of taking the time to understand something and saying, sometimes it's as simple as saying, Eric, I didn't understand what you're saying. I think this is what you're saying, but however, this is how I'm interpreting it. Is that correct? Can you please elaborate a little bit more? And if I'm wrong, please explain it to me. And it could be
So
things
simple.
as simple as that. And it amazes me sometimes that people don't want to have those conversations. And it's
Right.
not just something, I'm going to take it a little step farther, is you don't just see that a lot with understanding military personnel and conversations into different roles within everyday life, civilian life, but it can be something as you're looking at physicians, okay? They're on different schedules. They see different traumas depending on what they're doing, especially with cops. I have a lot of cop friends. I really, whether it's military personnel, cops, you know, a lot, especially in today's society, everyone's different. Everyone has different outlooks. Not every cop agrees with what every cop does. I salute my military personnel, those veterans who are coming back, as well as the cops that I know, because sometimes it's they're on different schedules. They're going through something you don't even know they're going through. And sometimes it's taking that little thing of saying, hey, I know you probably went through this today. You might not be in the mindset to talk about it, but when you just said that to me, I didn't fully understand maybe the mind process or what you fully went through. Can you explain it to me?
Mhm.
And that brings me to something else I want you to talk about. And I think is so cool that you do and you're a part of is that mentorship uh, that you do with military to military, but also civilians in roles with veterans coming out. And I want you to talk about that and why you think that's so important in today's society.
I'm gonna listen. This is really simple. Everybody needs a mentor. Everybody. My wife and I have couples that are a season or two ahead of us who have already traversed and walked some of the ground in relationship that we lean on. Right. I've got a finance mentor because, well, I suck at math. Right. And so I recognize that I need a finance mentor. But when it comes to the veterans and military spouses, I do want to talk about ACP because I've got to give a plug for my organization, right? American Corporate Partners is a veteran nonprofit. We're a 501c3. The beauty in that is everything we do for our veterans and military spouses is free, right? So what we do is we partner with these incredible companies. We've got roughly 125 partnered companies. Most of them are Fortune 100, Fortune 500, even some Fortune 50 companies. What these companies do is they partner with us, and then the mentors that they provide come from within their walls. See, the mentors aren't ACP employees. I would love to break my arm patting my whole team on the back about what a great job we do for our community, but it's not, it's really not us, right? It's incredible mentors from incredible organizations who take the time and volunteer their time to mentor transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses. And when they do that, they're investing, and check this out, this is the beauty of it all. They invest an entire year into that one person. So they're gonna be paired with the mentors gonna be paired with we call them a protege, right? A veteran military spouse or an or a transitioning service member. They're gonna be paired with that person for a year. They're gonna get at a minimum of one phone call a month for a year, and they're gonna get poured into that veteran service member is gonna get poured into, and they're going to learn about the industry, right? It's about, hey, I've got these talents and these skills, and I think that's the industry I want to be in. So help me learn how to get there. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Olivia, when it comes to my community, if you just show us how, If you just say, hey, you might need this certification, or you might need this degree, or you might want to go and do this, your resume should really look like this. You should probably wear this to an interview. If you just give us the nuggets that are in your world that we don't know yet, we're gonna crush it. We're gonna crush it. My community is strong. We're gonna crush it. We just need somebody to show us what we got to do, right? So we have these great mentors who we pair them up with a like I said, one of our veterans, our military spouses, and then they pour into them, providing industry relevant information, you know, with all kinds of insight. So it's a great program. I do want to talk about who we serve though, because just so I want to make sure we're very clear. Any service member who has served at least 180 days post 9/11. So 6 months after 9/11, if you covered any period of time up to that and then beyond, right? Right. So any service member, any transitioning service member, when it comes to my transitioning brothers and sisters, I say the sweet spot for engaging with an ACP mentor is 12 months before you go on terminal leave. That way, as you go on terminal leave, as you start talking to employers, that mentor and you have been working together for a year, you've got everything lined out, you've talked about salary negotiation, you've talked about interviews, all the things that we don't necessarily have to do in the military, right? For 25 years, I never negotiated my salary, believe it or not. Didn't matter what command they gave me or what position or how much responsibility. I got my salary that they said I was going to get, and that was it. I didn't get to negotiate that. So those things are all very important. And so as you walk into your transition leave, you have all that information and you're primed and ready, right? Now I will say there's no such thing as too late. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, I got 2 months till I'm out. That's okay. You're not too late. I just think that's about the sweet spot. And that we serve, excuse me, we serve three unique populations of military spouses, all active duty spouses, regardless of the stage of career that their service member is in. I don't care where they're all of our gold star spouses and surviving spouses. Okay, so those are spouses who have lost their loved one. And then any spouse of a disabled post 9/11 veteran. So if you are a person hearing this and you fit the mold anywhere in there, and you're looking at a career change, or you're looking at transition, or you're looking at, I just want to know how to grow in my current role. I still talk to my ACP mentor. I'm an alumni, guys. I still talk to my mentor. I'm not looking for a new job, but I do want to know how to grow my sphere of influence. I want to know how to grow within my organization. I want to know how to be the best teammate. Sometimes I want to know how to stop being such an army guy, right? When I engage with my teammates, how do I got to soften my mentor has been incredible. I still talk to her. So it's a great organization. Mentorship is important because we need it at all stages of life, in all aspects of life. We need someone to pour into us. And I know that that's hard, especially to the senior folks, right? My senior enlisted, my senior officers, the folks that have been in for a long time. I get it. You're sitting back and you're like, no, 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 I am the mentor. Yeah, so was I. I mentored thousands of soldiers. I still needed mentorship. I'm not done growing. I'm in the middle of transition. I'm not done being stretched. I'm not done being challenged. I want more. I'm hungry. And that means I have to have someone who's going to help me navigate that. So with my senior folks, you're not done. You're not washed up. It's not over. You haven't made it. You're not plateaued. You got to engage with a mentor. That's why I just, you got to get in with ACP.
And one thing I kind of want to mention as well, and I think it's amazing that ACP has created this ability for mentors and vice versa. And what I want to stress as well, especially to the civilians, is get involved as well. Become
Mm,
those mentors. You know, we can all be a mentor and a mentee to someone. And especially in a great organization like ACP, and Eric, you and I've discussed this. As a mentor, you can gain a lot of perspective and change your outlook as well from your mentee. And you can really help as well in both directions, change the trajectory of how someone thinks, how, what they might want to be doing. But mentors are wanted as well. ACP does a great job of getting, military spouses of all different walks, military veterans, people who want those opportunities. They're there. They want mentors. So become a mentor and be part of that relationship with ACP too. And so it isn't just for veterans. If you're listening to this and you have no military perspective or experience, I should say, become a mentor, get involved, and there's always a way to get involved. Eric, that being said, how can people get in touch with you in order to connect with you?
So I love connecting on LinkedIn. I tell people all the time, and I think Olivia, I think we discussed this the first time we talked. I'm a sucker for a good cup of coffee and a great conversation. So I look forward to meeting anyone on LinkedIn. Please, Olivia gave you my email address, ebrew at acp-usa.org, and then find me on LinkedIn, connect with me there. But if you want, if you're one of those civilians, if you're one of those folks that say, you know what, I've got some industry experience and I've got some perspective and I've got some knowledge I think I can share. It's www.acp-usa.org. Go on there, fill out the application, become a mentor. That same website applies to my veteran brothers and sisters and our military spouses. Go on the website, jump on, fill out the application. I'll give you some old sage first sergeant wisdom. 100% of people who don't start something won't finish it. You got to take the first step, right? And the first step for us is filling out that application and then letting one of our staff members reach out to you. Um, and we're going to love on you. Our mentors are going to get a point of contact assigned to them. Our veterans and military spouses, they're going to get a point of contact assigned to them. It's a very, very high touch, white glove experience. We've got an incredible staff who love nothing more than welcoming in our mentors, hugging and loving on our veterans, our military spouses, putting you guys together and watching people flourish. I'll tell you, it's cool because, like I said, we're an organization that focuses on mentorship. But every single day, we watch this beautiful byproduct blossom in employment. And I'll just share with you, Olivia. I don't know if I got to say this because the numbers just came out, but last year we had over 2,400 ACP proteges find employment last year. Those folks have an average starting salary of over $93,000, and over 1,100 individual companies hired those folks. So the word is out. People know where the talent pool is. They know how to come and get it. We just got to get that communication down on both sides, have that open and transparent and an authentic dialogue. And with just a little bit of mentorship, with just a little bit of fire in under our rear end, we can kill it. So, mentors, we'd love to have you. Veterans, transitioning service members, spouses, please, please, please come see us. Engage with us and engage with a mentor.
Thank you, Eric Brew, for all of your insight today. A few key takeaways from today's conversation are resiliency in transition. Always be resilient and realize that a setback is not necessarily the end all be all. Get up, brush your shoulders off, and stand tall, and just keep having resiliency, and you will end up being successful in the way you want to be successful. The second thing is you need to give yourself permission not to have all the answers. It is okay. It is okay to say, I do not know, but I will figure it out. I will get the answers. And when I get the answers, even if the answer the first time is wrong, I will take that, pivot, and figure out the right answer. As well as people want to be seen and heard. Validate them, validate their feelings. Even if you do not disagree with someone, say, I hear you, I see where you're coming from, and explain where you might be coming from so that both sides can be seen and heard. As well as sometimes it is about looking at your experiences differently. Sometimes don't have those goggles on and say, this is how I experienced it. It's the only way to talk about it. It's the only way to do something, and translate that time in my life, that moment, and what I went through. Sometimes it's about taking those goggles off and saying, how can I look at this differently to maybe understand it differently, understand the situation differently, and get a different perspective on it, which could end up giving you a different outlook altogether. Together. This was a great episode with our top notch guest, Eric Brew. Thank you for listening and have a successful day. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Hold on, my earbuds just went out. One fell